Hello, and welcome to the Comedian's Paradise. This is a podcast where we speak to mavericks across the comedy world. Now, today's guest is a man who will change a pebble into a swan, if you have a script. It's a man who is a great writer. He's a man of two worlds. You could say Jekyll and Hyde. You could say man of mystery. You could say James Bond of writing and script editing. Please welcome the fantastic, the brilliant Andrew Ellard.
The James Bond, I'm taking that. I have a friend who calls me a script wizard, which I used to be my favourite descriptor, but the James Bond of script editing. It may be just that I've been playing the James Bond game recently, and that's an especial delight right this moment, but oh yeah, I'll take that, blimey.
GoldenEye was a great game.
GoldenEye was a great game.
I've never really gotten to any other James Bond game, but GoldenEye had something about it.
It was special and era-defining, but I have to go out on a limb and say that 007 First Light is not only the best James Bond game, but honestly, one of the best video game experiences I've ever had. It is so well written. The mechanics are great. This is not what the podcast is about, but I've had such a good time with its story, and it lands almost every blow it's trying to land. And it makes you feel like Bond by playing. By that, I mean, you don't feel like a guy who shoots a lot of things. You feel like somebody who goes to exotic environments, does some sneaking, does some very clever interacting with other human beings, gets into fights where he has to improvise, and also occasionally does some shooting, which is like the right balance. The era of the first-person shooter Bond game is gone for a while, and now it's a spy game, and I'm loving it.
I do like James Bond is a great little never-ending film series, but I think they made a little bit of a mistake with Daniel Craig, and I think they put him on for too long.
You know what? Let's not go into it because I disagree. But we.
Sorry, man.
I could do like hours and hours of James Bond stuff. I've got a huge like emotional vested interest in that character. We screened Skyfall at my wedding is how invested I am in that. So, and that was my wife's choice. That wasn't mine. So yeah, no, we'll skip over the Daniel Craig controversies for the time being. But I could do a whole other podcast on Bond, honestly.
I'll leave on one thing, and I'm just going to ask, who would you like to play James Bond? A lot of people say Idris Elba.
He's too old for the part now, Idris Elba. He is. You know, you can't replace Daniel Craig with another man in his late 50s. That doesn't. Is he late 50s? Something like that. It's God. I quite liked. I can't remember his name now. The guy who was in the first season of Bridgerton, Reggie John. I can't remember the poor guy's name, but he's got a suaveness and a smoothness. But here's the thing: casting director is a job for a reason. You have to be able to know not what actors who have already done something can do again, but what actors are capable of that they don't even know. Daniel Craig wasn't on anybody's like immediate guest list at the time, but it's something. Casting directing, like production design, like anything else, is a skill where you see something that other people can't see. Because, like, of course, we could find someone who's already been a leading man and held a gun. But that's not the trick. The trick is finding the people the way you go, blimey, I didn't know he had that in him.
What is an example of where the fantastic casting director has made a piece of shit look amazing? Because a lot of people, I remember when I was younger and I watched The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great movie, but a lot of people said that the Joker made that movie.
I mean, I think the thing is, Christopher Nolan has yet to make a genuinely bad film, so it's hard to argue that the casting director made a bad film into a good one or whatever. But for sure, Heath Ledger's Joker is like one of those definitive. I'm sorry, that pretty guy from the rom-coms as the Joker, and you watch the performance, and that's the thing. Actors have so much more, and I think this is true of writers actually as well. You have so much more in you than people will assume you have based on the work that you've done so far. The work you've done so far tends to be whatever you could get paid to do, whatever opportunities were out there. If you were Australian and handsome, charismatic with good hair, of course, in your 20s, rom-coms beckoned. But that doesn't mean that that was like the thing you're destined for, the thing you're best for. You only have to look at like the way some child stars have grown into very different adult personas, and you go, actually, that's 10, 15 years difference. But imagine what you could be in 10, 15 if you were given the opportunities to do. It's like Stephen Moffat going from sitcoms to Doctor Who, to Dracula to horror. And you go, well, that in theory those aren't the same, but actually no, there are commonalities between them. It's just that those weren't the gigs that were being offered to writers who were very funny when he started out. So you get known for one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the thing you're best at, I guess.
And what about Arnie Schwarzenegger when he played the Kidney Garden Cobb into like the Terminator?
Well, that's the thing. It depends what movies, but when Arnold Schwarzenegger does Twins with Ivan Reitman, and I think Kindergarten Cop's the same. Twins is a really good comedy, and it knows how to. Arnold Schwarzenegger is often as good as the directors he has. James Cameron gets the best out of him. Ivan Reitman gets the best out of him, but in completely different ways. There is a thing about playing with the type. Once you're very famous, you can play with your type, and people recognize you as a person who smashes through walls. So it's really funny if we put you in a comedy where you're kind of a low status character. But God forbid, not many writers are famous enough to be so pigeonholed that, they have the actor problem of, I'm already so well known for this, they won't let me do anything else. But there is a thing of every so often you see a drama writer suddenly do sitcom, and or rather you see them write something funny. I always thought Russell T Davies would make an amazing sitcom if he was ever given the urge to do it. He's got too much to say, I think, in depth and whatever. But if he just wanted to write a half an hour a week hoot, he would have no problem being incredibly funny.
One of the things, oh God, we're getting quite deep in this, but I'll say what my thoughts are. I stopped watching Doctor Who as soon as Peter Capaldi left, and I never really got back into it. I watched a couple of episodes of Jodie Whittaker, but I just felt it lost its spark. And then when I watched it with, I think someone who chose Ncuti Gatwa was a bad decision. I think
really.
I just don't think. I think they should have got someone else.
That's a complicated one. Yeah. There's a funny series of things. Oh God, I'm now on a Doctor Who podcast. You've got me doing a James Bond podcast and Doctor Who podcast. Again, I could do hours on this. My feeling about Ncuti is it was a very difficult first season for him because he wasn't in a quarter of that season. There were 2 episodes where he had to be written out because he was still doing sex education and therefore wasn't available to film. And that's a rough way to introduce your Doctor, with not actually being the star of the show. So that's tricky. There's also an uncomfortable truth that actually in some ways Dot and Bubble, the episode that he's not in very much, is maybe his best episode. Not because he's absent, but because when he does show up, there is an emotional wallop to what happens thereafter that really works. But I gotta say, I mean, talking about casting, I've been watching and really loving SNL UK. I think they've done an incredible job with that show. And he followed Hannah Waddingham, who was on the week before. And he was perfectly fine in the sketches, but he always felt to me like Ncuti Gatwa. She was transformative in every single sketch she did, with a strapped-on personality and an accent choice and a performance style. And I was like, oh my God, you would have made an incredible Doctor. I would still, Hannah Waddingham for Doctor Who, I would say.
Oh. But, God, yeah, we've definitely gone through a lot of wild circles here.
I know. Sorry about that.
It's my fault as a host, but hey, I've had all sorts of interests. Like I had a black belt jiu-jitsu instructor on. Yesterday, I had a fantastic. He's quite a viral, successful mime artist called Silent Rocco.
Oh, he talked on the podcast though, right?
Just about, yeah. But no, we got really deep into like, because I've had a lot of weird things happen to me in terms of, there's a lot of weird things happen where my workplace is. They're a bit borderline racist at times as well, but there's some they say to each other, but they do it in a way where that's how they relate to each other.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot, they push the boundaries a bit, but what am I saying?
I have no idea.
The point I'm saying is you choose what affects you. Don't let others choose what affects you. That's what I
think that's probably a thing. And also, it's very easy to be led down alleyways if you want to go down them, which racism, but also Doctor Who. If you bring up a topic that the other person is fascinated by, they will start talking about it. So it's as much my fault because I'm so easily led if you give me a topic I like.
But what we talk about, it's a comedy podcast, but yeah. What is your comedy journey? Let's start off that. Like, how did you get to being like a script editor, writer, and you've been in many of the best sitcoms in the UK. I mean, you've been involved with them. Like Red Dwarf, I watched a couple of it. It's been brilliant. You've been involved with the It Crowd. One person at work says that I remind him of Richard Ouedi for some reason. I don't know why, but he's a lot smarter. But
I can see it though. I can see it.
Oh, what would you say that makes me?
I don't know. There's something in your demeanor. I guess I don't know. It's hard to say. There's something very specific about that personality type, and that. The thing is, I see a lot of Richard Ayoade's character in that show in myself as well. But then I was recently diagnosed autistic. So, like, I don't think there's a complicated line to draw between my relationship to that character and me. But yes, I have. I've been very lucky. I've worked on a lot of good stuff. And I grew up on Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf was a show that I watched at, I think, 11 years old, 12 years old. I was already like recording episodes off the TV. So to go full circle, it's basically my first full professional job in the industry was working for the Red Dwarf production company. I started off doing stuff for their website, writing content for their website, which escalated into doing all the bonus material for the DVDs. So like all the documentaries and stuff, I used to direct those. And that was great because that's like all of my fan knowledge and all of my curiosity about the show I got to turn into a profession for a few years. It was terrific. And in that time, actually, I mean, this is how I got started, really. In that time, Doug Naylor was developing the Red Dwarf feature film, which never went, but was so close to happening. And he used to send me drafts of the script for feedback. And it started off as, look, you're a fan of the show. If you watch this movie, what would you think? And I sent notes like as a fan, and then I sent notes of like, yeah, but structurally, like we could be maybe doing this and maybe this. And I got this lovely email back saying these are the best notes I've ever had. And I'm like, oh, that's flattering. And he recommended me. He recommended me to Paul Jackson, who was at ITV at the time. And obviously, Paul Jackson, legendary comedy producer of The Young Ones, and I think Filthy Rich and Cat Flap and Bottom, all the Rick and Aid stuff. And Paul's a hero of mine too, and he brought me on at ITV to consult on shows, essentially so that you could have, instead of getting notes from the channel and go like, what do they want me to do now? You get my notes, which hopefully make you go, ooh, that's a good idea. Maybe we could try that. Because I'm only interested in the writing of the show. I'm not interested in like what would get the most viewers or how to make it more mainstream appealing or give it a good poster. I'm just interested in, is this what you're trying to write? Here's how we can maybe even up that and get more out of it. So I got recommended to him, and at the same time I'd been writing myself. I'd entered, actually, the BBC back then had a thing called BBC Talent, where every year or two you could submit I think it was a spec script for Casualty, and I wrote one of those, and I got lovely feedback from that, and apparently got sort of down to the final, I don't know how many, but a number enough that they said, you are a good writer, please send us other stuff. And that got me a gig on Doctors in about 2001, 2002. So like that was my first ever bit of telly. as a writer. So I had two evolving careers at the same time: the script editing and the writing. And then I got super into the script editing. I can't lie. I found writing hard. It's a slog to invent a thing and then to make it good. Whereas helping other people make their stuff good, I find really easy. Oh. So my default position was to like go down exactly like doing exams at school. Like I passed the subjects I was interested in and I failed the ones that bored me. And it's like, yeah, me writing irritates me more than it delights me. So I've gone through ebbs and flows with my screenwriting. Thankfully, I'm in love with it again now, but there was a period there where I wasn't. And I was lucky that the script editing took off. I got recommended around. I did an online review that Graham Linehan saw, which is how I ended up editing the IT Crowd. Was literally like, if you like the reviews, you could have the review before you make the episode, and then we can make the episodes better. And then he recommended me to loads of people. My whole kind of journey has been the patronage of good people. So Doug Naylor and Paul Jackson and Graham, and then Nerys Evans, who was a Channel 4 commissioner who used to recommend me things and then hired me when she worked for a production company for years. And just a series of people who notice that you're good at it. It's not about who you know, because I'm terrible at that. Terrible at networking. Nobody wants to be in a room with me for too long. I'm incredibly irritating. But there are people who go, hey, I saw what you had to say about that script, and it made me realize that would be a good solution. And they bring me in to do stuff. It's been, honestly, I've loved being that script editory fixery guy. It's been a thrill.
Well, one thing, I think this is a trait for a lot of comedians. Sometimes what makes them funny and really good performers and really funny is the fact that they're a bit quirky. And for myself, I feel that I've got to adjust certain sides of myself when I'm in work. Mm-hmm. And I feel that, I've got a lot of quirks, but I've got to adjust them and find ways of handling them. But when they're in a certain context, they're very good. But do you feel that?
What I think about writers is you've got to have a perspective. If you are just going to say the same things everybody else says, then you haven't got much to write about. And the people who have... There are some people to whom the world looks much more interesting, or it offers more and peculiar things than we're aware of. And one of the things that good comedy does is draw your attention to how insane things are. Like why we do the things we do and why we behave the way we behave and the system. Pierre Novelli, the comedian, has a terrific routine about chickens and how it's extraordinary how we've essentially got delicious meat on very small legs and it can't fly to get away. It's the most convenient animal in the history of anything. And its wings are delicious, even though they're just wings with... And you go, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but actually chickens are insane. And it's having that take on the world. It's having that perspective that points out our absurdities or whatever. So I don't know that if you have to be absurd, but I think it probably helps if you are. If you're a bit peculiar, there's a good chance that peculiarity, I don't know, like magnetizes to the peculiarities of the world. And also just solutions. Like good comedy plotting requires characters to be inventive. If you do the thing, like nobody's interested in a scene where character goes to post office and manages to pay successfully and it all goes fine. Like that's not an interesting transaction. But somebody who's like, no, I've brought these stamps. They are legal tender. I've got 10,000 1p stamps. So this will pay for my extraordinarily large bill that I'm about to rack up in postage. Whatever. The odd take on the world and the odd way of finding solutions to things. Good for comedy, very good for comedy.
And that's what they say with a lot of sitcom characters, isn't it? Like, remember with, I've spoken this scene a lot in terms of Trigger and Delboy with the falling through the bar thing. And the thing that makes it 10 times funnier is Trigger, but not thinking that he's disappeared. And then, like Delboy thinking he's a ladies' man. And I think a lot, whatever orientation you are, whatever, you've tried to impress someone of the opposite sex, or no, not opposite.
Yeah.
You've tried to impress someone that you like,
Someone that you
you've done
like.
something stupid.
Totally, totally. A writer that I know says, the nice thing about when you're attracted, comedically, the useful thing about when you're attracted to someone is people drop 20 IQ points when they're trying to impress somebody, when they fancy somebody. And also that Del Boy thing. God, I was in a shop the other day and I saw a Del Boy falls through the bar like play set, like a thing that you put and you press the button and it happens, and it's like that was the mid-80s. They're still making merchandise for that. Amazing. It's so iconic. But a lot of it has to do with like class, because Del Boy's in a wine bar. He'd normally be in a pub. But in that scene, so like his humiliation is worse because it has a class layer to it. It's like
Yeah.
a guy trying to fit in where he doesn't belong and trying too hard and not paying attention where he should pay attention. It's not just the excellent pratfall, and it's not just the trigger reaction, although both of those things are important as well. It's circumstances and behavior and character that make that land on all the, because he would be embarrassed. So the fact that he isn't gets it, only we share in his embarrassment, because Trigger doesn't notice. It's a joke just for us. It's really kind of I don't know. It connects you somehow to the thing you're watching even more than some of the people who are in it. You know.
Yeah, it's but everyone, it's like when someone, like with Benny Hill or some of these stupid things that happen, we're glad we're not them.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. No. And there's a whole slew of one of the great things about sort of the 2000s run of sort of cringe comedy is one of the reasons that's successful is you go, oh, thank God it's not me. I do that kind of thing, and I'm like, there's a relief that you're not as bad as Larry David is at life. Like, Curb Your Enthusiasm functions on a thing of like, yes, that would irritate me too, but I wouldn't say anything. And the show goes on to prove, you know what, sometimes it's better not to say anything. Just because somebody's jumped the queue, just because somebody's done something, parked in the wrong place, maybe don't have the argument because it might ruin your week. And it's like, oh, you know what, I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. There's a kind of relief to that.
Yeah. But how does well, from what you've said there about scripts and about sitcoms, I used to think that they were completely different. But from what you've said there, you're saying that whether it be a movie or TV series, sitcoms are very similar to a lot of other.
All of art leans into all of other art. We swirl together as a culture, right? Everything influences everything else. You can't write good pop music without knowing how classical works, but also that you'll find movie references and TV references in music, and music all over the television, and everything swirls into everything else. It's just one of the reasons I have a job as a script editor, actually, is because oftentimes there will be young writers who are brilliant voices, terrific voices, so much to say, but don't necessarily watch a lot of television and therefore haven't sat and analyzed it the way, some of us do. And so need to know how to turn 1,000 interesting ideas into a half hour that functions well. There's a sort of arts thing, and then there's the crafts part. And my job is to help you with I can't tell you how to be a good writer, but I can how to turn your good writing into something that works as television specifically. Because movies tend to beginning, middle, and end, right? Movies tend to conclude with the characters completely changed. Sitcom doesn't do that. Characters shouldn't change completely, because otherwise they won't be the same person next week, and now the show doesn't work. Imagine if David Brent was happy and not trying to be funny all the time. You don't have another episode of The Office. The show runs out. And in fact, kind of that's how the show ends. Like the finale of the British Office has David Brent finally speak up for himself against the crude sexism of his friend. And you go like, oh, if he's not going to be like that anymore, if he's content to be in a relationship and a good person, there isn't really a show anymore. His desperation was what made him funny, and now he's not desperate anymore.
But that wouldn't work for TV series much, would it? If they kept the characters same. Look at Game of Thrones; they changed the characters a lot, like with the
Yeah,
Hound.
but that's a drama, so the circumstances change every week. But the drives actually, I mean, Arya Stark gets, you know, darker and more experienced, but she starts and ends the show broadly, you know, keen on loyalty and keen on the justice and the right things and specific to family. I don't think you look at her in the final season fighting her battles and making her choices and go, God, what happened to that little girl? You go, that little girl was always going to end up here. That's exactly who she always was. Dramas will put characters through the ringer, and how they change is often a thing. But then the format of the show, eventually the format of the show either runs out or you start swapping characters. Soaps, you know, will change their characters over, you know, 3 or 4 years. And then do they still fit in the show? Maybe they do, but maybe there's somebody else now. If somebody figures out their sexuality or gets involved with crime, like, there will be fundamental. But on the other hand, I'm trying to think, the EastEnders has had Ian Beale in it for, I don't know, he's been in it for 30 odd, however many years. You can still kind of see the same character in there. You don't feel that they're fundamentally altered. Their quests continue. But sitcom has a different thing. Sitcom is not built on plot first and foremost. It's built on character first and foremost, who then make plots happen. If your character is kind of sensible and reasonable but quite funny, they probably can't make a sitcom happen, because why would a funny thing happen to them every week? They're too smart, or they're too reasonable. They're too at ease with the world. You want malcontents. You want people who aren't happy with their lot, because those are the people who will go after trying to change their life. And when they try to change it, that may be at odds with the skill set that they have. So Del Boy, Only Fools and Horses, the classic thing is, this time next year we'll be millionaires. And it's like, well, you don't have to be a millionaire. You just have to make enough money to keep your family stable. But he's always got to reach further than that. He's a really good salesman. He could be just working the market stall every day and be completely content. But because he's not content, he reaches, and he starts doing deals for dodgy deals for necklaces, and ends up with inflatable women dolls and all these other things that end up happening. And it's only because of his nature that those things happen. You can't force a comedy plot onto a quite banal and basic character. You can tell, audiences can tell, it feels forced, it feels fake. It's Basil Fawlty being immediately dismissive of people who are not of an upper class background. He makes the problems in that hotel. They wouldn't happen if it's not funny guests in a reasonable man's hotel. It's normal people coming into an increasingly unreasonable manager's hotel, and he is the cause of the problem. That's how you get stories every week. That's how the show generates plot without needing to put a lot of effort into, God, how do we get him into trouble this week when he would never get in trouble? You need that engine, that comedy engine. And if those characters ever become content, ever become fine and happy, and don't reach for something beyond their grasp and ability, the show runs out.
And what would you say are the things with Inbetweeners were outnumbered that made?
Oh man, I mean, Inbetweeners, those guys are those guys are desperate for a level of social acceptance, and certainly, like, women. There's a big quest for women in the Inbetweeners. They desperately want. It's a coming of age story, and essentially, when they come of age, the show has to stop. But in the meantime, their quest to impress women, to impress bigger men, to impress each other, it's a lot about status, the economics of status. And as long as they don't realize that, no, the way to be happy is to not chase after that stuff, is to be yourself and let it come to you, then the show gets to continue.
What do you mean by let it come to you?
Well, you know how they say, like, people who go, oh God, I'll never meet anyone. I'll be alone the whole of my life, and I will never fall in love, and nobody will ever love me. And the thing that keeps happening is, as soon as you give up trying, it gets a lot easier for that kind of stuff to find you, because desperation has a smell. People can if you go on dates because what you're trying to do is solve the problem of I am single. Nobody wants to date someone for that reason. You don't want to be with someone because they're desperate not to be single. You want to be with someone because you have chemistry, because you connect to them. And it's easiest to connect to somebody when that somebody is their authentic self. It's better to be weird and only attract one person, but it's the right person, than to try and make yourself seem generic and always attractive to everybody. You go, oh my God, all these, women will tell you if they dress up and look fabulous and get a lot of attention, but that's not necessarily what they wanted from that, because most of those men are not the kind of men they wanted to come to them in the first place. It's not about the numbers. People play it like a numbers game. Teenagers in particular, when they're still like, God, I need to prove that I'm something. And the Inbetweeners has got a lot of that. They're interested in women generally rather than like a specific person. And that's not the right way to handle dating.
Yeah. And yeah, there's so many things like there's so many horror stories. I mean, Simon and Carly, that's a brilliant story.
Right,
Oh,
right. No, very good show, very good show. And the Inbetween, Outnumbered, also very good. Most parents, the horrible truth about parenting, as far as I understand it, and I'm not one, but is you've ended up in charge of other human beings when you don't really feel like an adult yourself, because nobody ever grows up. We all think, I just turned 50 and I still mentally feel very much about 23. And it bothers me inordinately my body has continued to age. And so there you are with kids who ask you these questions that you were not anticipating, that you were not ready for, and you have two jobs simultaneously. One is to keep them informed and then educate them about the world, and the other is to protect them. And there's a clash between those two things. How do I protect them from the true horrors of the world when they're literally asking me about the horrors of the world? They've heard a thing on the news and now they want me to answer questions about it. And, some parents are like, well, I need to find the right way to say this. Some parents get exasperated and say the worst version, or worse, say, I'm not telling you that. Go and ask somebody else. Or come and ask me again later in the hopes that they'll forget. Kids never forget. They always have a question that, once it's in there, it's going to come back up again. It's a challenging thing, the challenge of being a parent. But again, those characters are specific. Those three kids are incredibly well drawn. They're very particular to that family. There's stuff that you recognize from being a parent generally, and then there's bits of behavior and attitude that are unique to those kids.
Yeah, no, but but all the ones that we mentioned were all quite. Would you say they're original? Because I know that some of like the Inbetweeners in America tried to copy it, and it was so cheap. And they copied a couple of scenes and words and just tried to make it American. They didn't do any creative effort or any sort of skill to make it.
I would disagree with that, because if you ask the people involved, I imagine they would have some very strong opinions about what they chose to do creatively. And to remember, choosing to keep like when you adapt a novel for the screen, choosing to keep dialogue from the novel is not lazy, right? That's honouring the source, because you're like, the reason I wanted to bring this to the screen was because I liked the thing that it was. What tends to go wrong with American versions is that the American TV has a slightly more, how do we say this? I'm not saying anything particularly new here. This is a very old cliche at this point, but American TV is a little more aspirational than British TV. With British TV, we tend to show you monsters and you go, oh my God, yes, I know someone just like that, or worse, I am like that myself. American TV tends to be a little more, gosh, I wish I hung out with those people. What's really interesting about like the British office versus the American office is they did the same thing to start with. They literally took one of the British scripts, adapted it for an American voice, and then shot it. And then it turned out that doesn't quite work, because there is a version of David Brent that doesn't click with an American audience the same way. They can watch the British show, that's totally fine, but something about, they had to make their version of that character someone who was actually very good at sales, which David Brent never was. But there's something about, no, he's terrible with humans, he's desperately needy, but it's much more childlike and innocent. With David Brent, it's a lot colder and more cynical, I think, and that works for the show that it was being over here. But the American version needed him to be, weirdly, a little more lovable, a little more capable. And if you ask people in the States whether they would be happy to work in the office from the office, I think plenty would say yes, because you know what? Enough of that office seems like fun.
Yeah.
They lose whole days to silly games, to we're all into parkour this week, or the question of is Hilary Swank hot completely divides the office, and you spend the whole day coming up with presentations and pitches about it, and it's like that sounds even better than my workplace. Like, I wouldn't mind that too much. So yeah, okay, you have to deal with Dwight and you have to deal with Michael, but the broad strokes of it is they are good, interesting, and funny people. They don't mean to be funny, but that's kind of okay. I don't think anyone wants to work in the UK office. I think people fight to get away from that existence.
But us Britain's a bit more, as a whole, they're not as showy or loud or.
I don't know. I go and watch us at a football game. I think we're plenty happy, bitch.
But in the office, but they say that Americans are more upbeat and sort of.
Yeah, there's a confidence to the American psyche that the British psyche kind of lacks, and probably rightly so. Like, it helps to be humble. I think it helps to have a perspective on yourself. To be fair, all of the British know what's wrong with Britain. If you ask an American what is the greatest country in the world, there is a statistically decent chance they will say America, even if they haven't been anywhere else. Whereas if you ask a British person, they might say Britain, but they will say, well, except for the weather, and except for this, and except for that. Or if they've been anywhere else in the world, they will very likely go, hey, do you know what was great? Australia. I had a brilliant time there. That's a terrific country. Like, there's a little bit less, I need to prove that my country is the best. I was married to an American. It's completely reasonable for me to say this. I did pick one as my preferred person, so... I feel like I'm allowed to talk about America this way. I love my American family, but yeah, there is a vibe difference to the all of the culture, and therefore to the comedy.
Is the way TV series? Oh, this is such an obvious question. It's probably but what would you say the key differences in the way sitcoms are done in America compared to here?
God, I mean, I think that the main one is the thing I just said, which is the difference in monsters versus people you want to spend time with. It's not that we don't do both. One of the reasons I think Red Dwarf actually is really successful in both countries is because Rimmer is the kind of monster that you know from work. I've met that guy. I've dealt with that guy. I again feel slightly like I am that guy. But Lister is like an affable everyman that you could absolutely happily get a curry with and sink a few beers. And it's that thing of like, oh, so you kind of got a British lead and an American lead in your sitcom, and that kind of bestrides the Atlantic. Whereas, yeah, you only have to look at Friends. Like, in theory, Friends is about 6 20-somethings who don't have their life together. But what you do is go like, man, I wish I had 5 good friends that I could just hang out in a coffee shop with all day. Like, in theory, that's a bunch of losers, but they are absolutely not, because they are all beautiful and they are all resourced enough that they can spend all of their free time hanging out, paying for expensive coffees, and they've got their nice apartments and their good friendships and all of that.
Who would you say is your favourite character in Friends, and why?
Ooh. Oh dear. I mean, the thing is, I loved Chandler the most because that defensive thing of using his sense of humor. He's such a gift as a character on the page, because he's the one who is actually trying to make jokes the whole time. And for an American sitcom, that's incredibly useful, and it should be irritating. But between Matthew Perry, who is just extraordinary as a performing talent, just such a gift, such good timing. Between that and the character's backstory, which was ultimately like his need to make jokes, his need to wisecrack comes very specifically from a background and a personality where he feels very low status. His self-esteem is pitiful, you know. Friends is really good for stuff like that. You pair the guy who doesn't believe that any woman could ever be attracted to him with Joey Tribbiani, who thinks all women are attracted to him. It's like so immediately good chemistry. But I love them all. I related to Ross a lot when I was younger, and I feel bad about that now because now everyone's realised he's actually kind of awful. But David Schwimmer's again another terrific. And oh my God, Lisa Kudrow is just magic. I don't know why. I've been rewatching The Comeback because that just had its 3rd season, and that's such a terrific show, and she's so good in it. But she was a little scene stealer in Friends. Like nobody would consider the kind of. She didn't get most of the lead stories, but she as a performer, her gift for finding weird line readings that make the lines funnier is just extraordinary. Weird line readings should make the gags fail, but somehow she makes them fail upwards. I don't know how you do that.
Well, yeah, Friends was a great, and it wasn't. Yeah, it was very. Well, more or less family friendly. A lot of people could watch it. It wasn't really offensive, to be honest.
Yeah, although I sat down a few years ago with my nephew who was 6 at the time, and you realise, oh, there's quite a lot of sex jokes in this actually.
That's true.
Oops. But his mum came in while we were hanging out watching it, and we're watching Friends, and I'm not sure he understood a blink of it, but it was bright and it was colourful and it was full of laughter. Like you can see why. Again, Russell Davies has a thing where he's like, when I want people when they see one of my shows, when they're channel hopping and stumbling across stuff, they look at it and go, "Ooh, that looks pretty. I should watch a little bit of that." Like just do aesthetic appeal. Friends was really good at that. Friends just looked delicious.
What do you think made? There was also that I tried watching the spin-off of it with Joey Tribbiani, but that didn't really have as much of a splash, did it?
It's very hard. I mean, number one, he was built to be part of an ensemble. To take it, look, it can happen. Frasier is amazing, but it is very hard to take a character who was built to be part of one show in one particular way to give them a show where their role is completely different. It's a tricky thing to do, and in fact, even Frasier found it difficult because the second time they did it, it didn't work. The recent reboot of Frasier, where they essentially went the Joey route of like, here's some of his other relatives to hang out with. It didn't click the same way. It's very hard with Joey though, because he's as a character, he's quite hard to make low status because he's not easily. He doesn't feel defeat the same way most people do. You know, he was kind of endlessly resilient. He was able to cope on a peanuts income, so it was very hard to kind of get. He had a drive for fame, but by the time he was getting his own sitcom, he'd already been a lead character on a TV show. His life and circumstances were not necessarily well built to be the lead in a sitcom, but he was the one that said. The actor was the one who said, "Yeah, I'd be okay with trying out for doing a sitcom of my own like this." And LeBlanc's great in that part, but he just, it's very hard character to build a half hour out of.
Yeah, true. And there's another one that I used to watch called 8 Simple Rules, and it was really good with the original guy. And they did recover it a bit with the David Spade and the other guy that was in it, but it wasn't quite the same.
Right, I haven't seen it. I wouldn't know, but television, any kind of TV, is such a delicate thing. It's impossible to know whether a thing will succeed, and when it does succeed, it's hard to change anything because then people have the thing in their head of this is what it is, and I like it this way. Changing a lead actor, changing a main character, changing a format, changing the shooting style even can be incredibly distracting and upsetting once you've locked in. People want television to be more of the thing that I already like, but also please don't do the same thing again.
Yeah, it's there you go. Yeah, it's you're bringing back memories now of all the things I remember with friends.
Well, that's good, but I can't, I didn't work on any of those, so I can't talk. I mean, I can have a lot of opinions, but I can't give you anything useful for a podcast about writing and comedy. But God, I love that show. Yeah.
Do you get many comedians coming into you and asking about sitcoms?
I've done a lot of. They don't come to me, but production companies bring projects that comedians have been building to me, and it's funny. It's almost easier for comedians. I don't want to say that because there'll be comedians listening who go like, "That's not true," but it feels, as a writer who has tried to get stuff away, it feels easier for comedians to get stuff away because when they come in to pitch, they come in as themselves. They are as funny as they naturally are. And the person goes, oh yeah, I can imagine you being funny on television because you're funny in this room and I've seen you be funny on a stage. Whereas when writers come in with a pitch, it's like, okay, so you're like schlubby and uncomfortable in company. Yes, hello. And you think you're really funny. I think I'm funny on the page. I don't think I'm funny in person, and I don't think I'd be good on a stage. But I promise you I'm funny written down. Well, now that person has to use their imagination to get that script over the line into this. I would imagine this would be it feels like from where I'm sitting, it feels like an easier sell if and I've done, like I script edited on Miranda years ago, and you go like, well, of course, Miranda comes into your office and behaves like Miranda and talks like Miranda. I understand why there's a main Miranda character here that we could make a sitcom out of. But nobody thinks, God, there should be an Andrew Ellard sitcom where Andrew Ellard's, a version of him is on screen. That's why Larry David ends up playing himself, because although, that Seinfeld, to be fair, they're like the main characters of Seinfeld are essentially three Larry Davids. These irascible people who cannot stand the way the world is and get angry enough to try and fight back. There's a lot of overlap there. But yeah, no, lots of stuff with comedians. And it's not universally true, but one of the things that is often true, a lot of the nature of stand-up, not all stand-up, but the nature of a lot of stand-up is observational, right? It's observational comedy where you go, have you ever been at the checkout and this thing happens and these people behave like this? And it's a communal experience where we all agree that kind of thing goes that kind of way. And we have observed the terribleness of other people's behavior, as well as, with a bit of luck, the terribleness of your own thought process. But a lot of the first drafts I've seen from comedians tend to be shows where all of the characters around the main character are funny idiots, and the main character is very reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you've built this backwards. And I understand how you get there, because it is sort of the end result of the, God, aren't we just surrounded by idiots and stupidity? We are, but TV requires that the main character be one of those idiots. It requires. I can't remember who wrote it, but I remember one where the main character, he wrote himself going into, I think, a corner shop, and the guy behind the counter was hilariously unreasonable in the way that he dealt with customers. And then they had their exchange, they got some laughs, and he leaves. And the camera follows our main character off into the street to carry on his sitcom. And I'm like, I like the sitcom that's happening in there. I like the sitcom that would be about the guy who tries to run a shop but is completely unreasonable in the way that he treats customers. Because that's how you get black books, right? That's how you get a sitcom about a character who makes funny things happen all the time. Being the reasonable one is no way to build a sitcom. You've got to be in some way broken or battered or reaching too far for something. It's got to be. You got to find life hard somehow, because otherwise, why are stories happening to you? Oh, because everyone else is funny. Well, why don't they have a sitcom? What do we need you in it for? It's a tricky thing. It's where you have to switch from. Have you ever noticed that the world is a problem to? Have you ever noticed that I'm a problem? I did a thing years ago called Outsiders, which was a series of comedy blaps for Channel 4. And I wrote story outlines for that, and then we had the cast come in and essentially improvise around the storylines. And then I took what they'd come up with and my plotting and my writing and combined it all together into a scripted set of little comedy shorts. And the casting of that was very deliberate. The producers had gone looking for comedians so that essentially we had a steady stream of funny people saying funny things. But what was great was in the casting process, in figuring out who was going to be in it, I sat down with each of them and said, okay, so tell me what's wrong with you. Tell me why you're unreasonable. Tell me what makes you unreasonable. Tell me the problems that you cause. Because that's where I'm going to pull from all the character stuff. People who say, well, I'm quite reasonable and affable and I like punk music. And it's, well, okay, I can't do anything with that but if you tell me why you get annoyed at things, what bothers you most, what irritates you, what winds you up, why are you why are you the person that they wish would leave the party? That will give me what we can pull from to give you
okay. Yeah, and that's what's watchable. We don't want to watch something that's even Steven cool. We want something that's wild and unpredictable and a bit
having a regular guy roll his eyes at the camera is nowhere near as interesting as having an interesting guy who causes problems. Like, just to make a show happen every week, to make plots happen every week.
What do you think is the cure if you lived that life?
Sorry, say that again.
What is the cure if you lived that life?
Why is the cure if you live that? Right? Yeah, and it's that different. The thing we talk about in writing a lot of the difference, the wants and the needs of the character, right? If Basil Fawlty, he wants the hotel to be like this bastion of like upper class delight. He wants to attract a very wealthy clientele and become known as, and revere the wealthy and the powerful. If he could just, instead of doing that and worrying about that, if he could just be nice, professional with every single customer who came in, he would have a perfectly contented life. Not thrilled and wealthy and whatever, but he'd be fine. But he has to jump to conclusions. He has to hate things immediately. Guy comes in with his shirt half open and a medallion on. Hates him immediately. Meanwhile, wealthy people come in and he's immediately obsequious and has no idea that that's a con man with a brick in his briefcase who doesn't actually have anything of value. He can't see the real world because he's so blinkered by this other stuff. He wants one thing. He needs something else. And if he ever got what he needs, it would stop the show functioning. And that's kind of true of a lot of comedy characters, I think, a lot of leading characters, that engine of they want one thing and they need something else. And as long as they go after the thing they want and their nature prevents them from getting it. I love Community, the sitcom Community, and Jeff in that is such a good protagonist because in theory he's like one of those handsome people surrounded by idiots, but actually he is the most craven, the most selfish, and he wants the shortcuts. He's incredibly intelligent and could just pass some exams, but because he's always looking for the shortcut, he never gets where he's going. He keeps failing because the shortcuts fail.
What is there any element of that makes some great stand-ups really good? Because I know that there's Al Murray plays a bit of a character with.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's a character comedy performance, isn't it? That's more than stand-up, or not more than, other than stand-up. He is so tuned into how that character thinks and feels and behaves. He's judgmental. He has a moral and ethics system all of his own that he is unafraid to pour anywhere, because he's gone power mad, right? The landlord is power mad. He is absolutely in charge of his domain and has no fear about stating these things out loud. I love live stand-up character comedy. you can't have much more fun than Steve Coogan doing Partridge for 90 minutes to a big audience. Like,
Jack Whitehall's pretty good as well. He plays that. He's got a distinct persona in that when he's on talent shows, he plays a nervous, effeminate man who's straight. But there's a lot of stupid things where he's scared on League of Their Own, and then like when he's doing stand-up, he's
interesting. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, and you know, I don't want to suggest that, you know, stand-up personas are always literally the truth of that human being. Often part of the trick to being a good stand-up is figuring out what your voice and stage persona is. I've thankfully never had to do it. Nobody wants to see me do that. But the knack is, okay, so I'm writing funny stuff, but now they need to know who I am so that we're on the journey. And so you establish sort of your character with the audience. Sarah Millican is like one in a million. Like, she's so peculiar and specific in her personality, and it's like everyone's mad aunt or something. It's a gift to, well, it's not a gift, it's a job, it's a thing you figure out, that sort of stage persona.
Now, you've been involved in, like, you're writing sitcoms, you've been involved in script editing for sitcoms, TV series, movies. What would you say that are the things you like about all of them individually?
Oh, God.
And dislike about them.
Oh, okay. All right, well, look, weirdly, the answer is kind of, it all sort of crosses over. I like that movies are finite. I like that movies carry you through mostly a single story. I mean, we've talked about like Bond films and there's Marvel and whatever, but mostly you write a movie story, it's because you want to put a very specific character through a very specific journey. And the hugeness of that and the catharsis of coming out the other side of it, of a character going after what they want and instead getting what they need. Again, talking about wants and needs. Movies kind of function like that. Character wants a thing, but they don't realize that they needed something else. Like you watch Romancing the Stone, and that's a woman who wants to rescue her sister, but what she needs is to get out of her enclosed, frightened life where she really doesn't like leaving her apartment, and become someone who can embrace adventure, like the adventure books she writes as an author. The movie story, the nature of the movie story is so built on character arc and change. And sitcom is the opposite. Sitcom is very keen to, is required to keep doing the same thing over and over again and never quite having the characters learn. Dan Harmon, who wrote Community, or who created Community, and wrote a lot of it, is he created a thing called the story circle, which is where the character starts off going after the thing that they want, but as the plot goes on, really it becomes a scramble just to put things back how they were because you've made stuff so much worse. And that's a really good way of thinking about sitcom plots, that the end result is, oh, thank God, I'm just back where I started, which is a relief after the mess that you nearly turned everything into. And that doesn't work for movies. If you get to the end of a movie and everyone's literally back where they started, you'd better be doing that because you're making a very specific point about the circular nature of human beings. Mostly we go there for change and catharsis, and that is not achieved if you just end up back at the beginning of the episode, at the beginning of the movie, at the end of the movie. You want to have felt the journey. Whereas sitcom, it's a little more. But what I love about television is that you do end up sort of friends with these people. There's a really nice show at the moment called Jury Duty, which is, they've done 2 seasons of it, and the premise is essentially it's essentially a reality show, and they take one real person from the real world. And in the first season, it was a guy who they said, we're doing a jury trial. You are juror number 8, whatever it was. And in the second season, it was a guy who goes to work for a company who they're having their vacation, their working vacation, where there will be lectures and there will be talks and there were team bonding exercises and all of this. That one person is real, and everything around them is set up and scripted and planned. So what you end up with is one character who doesn't know he's in a sitcom, and everyone else is a sitcom character. And what's extraordinary about that, and I love this so much, the second season of that, at one point our regular member of the public guy who just thinks he's doing a job comes out of a meeting with all of the characters and turns to one of the characters and says, I knew he was going to say that. I just knew he was going to say that. And you go, that's it. That's how we watch sitcoms. When somebody tries to get something useful out of Trigger in Only Fools and he says something stupid, a part of you goes, oh, it's so Trigger. That's so him. That's so in character. We get to know them like they're friends. We all have friends in our lives where you go like, I'm not going to tell them I did that because they'll be judgmental about it, or they can't be trusted with the secret that I would tell them, or I would like to buy them this, but I know they'd hate it. We know the tastes and modes of our friends, and what good character comedy often does is give you that same level of familiarity with the characters. And so you see them week after week after week until I already know what to say to Angela in the American Office to piss her off, or what to say to endear myself to her. That's crazy. She's a fictional human being in another country. Like, how can that be true? But that's the joy of it, is that they've established her so well and made you understand her so well, that you feel like, even if you wouldn't want to spend a lot of time with them, they do feel like familiar family to you. They feel like a friend group that you have. I love that about television. I love how much, and that doesn't just go for sitcoms. Like I've got 3 Game of Thrones figurines on the shelf downstairs, and it's Arya Stark, Brienne of Tarth, and Tyrion Lannister, because those are the 3 characters that I feel like I most understand and I most connect to. And again, it's just extraordinary. Like, I feel a connection to these. It's what art is for, right? It's to connect you to other human beings, even if they happen to be made up.
And with you working on different sides of the coin, what's it like working with like people that like commission scripts and like people in TV and like people at the higher end? Like if there's this guy called, I don't know, Will, listening in, hi, Andrew, how do I get my sitcom on farts commissioned?
Right. Well, honestly, a very good script would help. A very good piece of talent attached would be another, I think. Honestly, Sam and Jesse Armstrong, who are, like Jesse's just, Succession is just like one of these cornerstone pieces of television now. But Peep Show benefited hugely from the fact that they'd been writing for Mitchell and Webb, and Mitchell and Webb were going to star in the TV version. So there's an awful lot that it helps a lot if you've got advocates who are talent that people want to work with. That's difficult. That's really difficult. I sometimes think the best thing that young writers could do is become friends with comedians who are on the rise. Because then you can go, look, if I write it, you can come in and collaborate with me on it and we'll do it together, yeah? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Because then that problem of like, how does the commissioner know whether this will be funny? Well, you've seen that guy stand up. It's like that all the time.
Oh.
But your sitcom on farts, if you want to get it away, number one, you've got to write a really good script for that. And then you get it to a production company. I mean, you send things to channels, but channels are kind of too big. Like, the pile of material is too big. What you want to go is to a producer, not to any old production company, but to a specific producer. Find somebody who did the last great flatulence comedy and say, hey, I've got another one that would totally work, and it's a brand new angle. It's a brand new take on the whole fart thing, if it's true. And you find someone who fits. Again, collaborators. You want people in your corner. Writers have so little power, unfortunately, until they become massively huge. They are an underpowered aspect of the industry. It seems ridiculous when that's where most of the good ideas and great executions come from, but here we are. Finding a producer who thinks you are a good writer and that the writing is good, and when they give you notes, you go, oh my God, that's even better. Yes, let's do that. Too many people just go, well, I've written a script at home and I sent it to the BBC and they haven't replied, and therefore this industry is impossible. And it's like, right, but you didn't do the clever things of like finding a production company who makes the kind of show you're talking about, research the producers, research the world, find out if there's anything else like it on television. There's nothing worse than sending a script in and they say, oh, like that show that's currently on BBC. Ugh. The number of times I've written pilots and a week later something like it has turned up on TV. And a part of you start to despair. And the other part of you goes like, all I am is slightly slower than I need to be. I'm further behind I am at least in tune with the zeitgeist because they're making stuff like I'm writing. It's just that they came up with it 9 months ago, and so I need to be I need to be 9 months faster in my ideas and execution to keep up with that. But yeah, find the right kind of collaborators. You find the right producer. You find the right performer. I mean, look, in the 21st century, go and get a bloody iPhone and shoot something. But buy an iPhone and a decent microphone, and go and film something and put it on YouTube. If you send a script to people, but you've got a 5-minute version that is just your 12 best jokes and brilliant character moments, you'll get a meeting out of that. You will absolutely get a meeting out of that.
Oh, yeah, I've forgotten what I wanted to say now.
That's all right. No worries. You got a list of questions somewhere, I'm sure.
No, but that's a great bit of advice. What do you often see with someone? So you've seen lots of scripts, especially with sitcom scripts. Mm-hmm. What have you noticed? And you've worked with some of the best out there. What have you noticed about top A-tier scripts? When someone's really got something special in terms of that sitcom.
That's a good question. That's a good question. What makes them? What distinguishes them quick? Do you know what? Actually, I just did some notes with a young writer who's never written TV before in his life. Brought me a 1 hour thing, and I basically gave him some notes, and we talked about like maybe actually it's a half-hour show and the focus is slightly off, but you could tell from the first 2 pages that he had something, that he had a knack. There was a rhythm to the dialogue, there was a wit to it, there was a clarity to it, where you can always make a script better. You can always make more changes and make it better. You can also make too many changes and make it worse. But there are some pieces of writing where you go, all right, we can change this and fix this and alter that, but I know how good you are because I've read these pages and I can see it. It's extraordinary how easy it is for good writing to stick out quickly because it's fascinating. It makes you laugh or cry or cringe, and it gets you on board super fast. However it's done. I always use it's a terrible example to use now because he's been super cancelled, but Joss Whedon's opening scene for Buffy the Vampire Slayer is still one of those extraordinary things because you go like, oh, it's a vampire show, and so two high school teens, boy and a girl, break into the high school. The teenage boy is like, don't worry, babe, it's all going to be fine. Nobody's here. We can totally just creep around and do whatever we want to do. And she's really nervous and shy. And he reassures her and reassures her. And she says, are you absolutely sure there's nobody here? And he went, yeah, babe, we're totally alone. And she says, good. And then her vampire face appears and she bites him. Yeah. And it's just that thing of like, oh, you've got me. You've won. Because I knew this was a vampire show, and I thought the joke we were about to do was either he's going to bite her or that they are going to be attacked by vampires. Like, those are my 2 assumed expectations for the scene. And instead, you found a third option that I didn't know was there. If your first page does that to a reader, they are going to read the next 15 pages. You've won them over. You've earned their trust. Something so immediately grabby and hooky, and that's a piece of writing that understands your expectations. It understands what you think you're going to get, and therefore how to not just hand you something obvious. It's the number of British fantasy shows over the years that tried to replicate the Buffy Doctor Who thing and kept doing front ends, which was like, it's a show about demons. What happens? Well, in the pre-title sequence, some kids are in a spooky graveyard. What happens? They get attacked by a demon. Well, yeah, I know. That's just I could have written that. Like, anyone could have written that. That's not the surprising part. What are you going to do that's going to make this interesting and surprising? And if you have nothing, then, you know, that's not necessarily a script anyone's going to warm to.
Yeah, that's Buffy was a great TV series. I know that some of the other stuff that he's written hasn't. Well, he's been cancelled. He's been quite controversial in some respects, and some stuff he's made.
The later stuff, and you know, it's funny. The last show he did was a thing called The Nevers, which I was really interested. Like steampunk Victorian women superheroes with steampunk tech, but I quite liked it as a show, but the second series didn't become a season, which was actually just the first half of the first season, but they split it into 2 blocks, and by the time the second lot came out, it didn't even get properly distributed. It was kind of years later that I finally saw the second half, and the second half threw in sort of everything from every Joss Whedon show. It's like, oh, we'll do time travel and psychics and people who have a different personality. And it's like, I have seen all of this in all the other shows now. It came a point where it's like, I think we've run out of ideas. I think there's a limit to how much stuff we can get out of this one idea over and over and over again, because there is so much overlap between Dollhouse and The Nevers and Buffy that it would be like if Russell was still writing Queer as Folk now, and he's not, like, he's gone so far beyond what that was and into new and peculiar and upsetting territory of a world and of a voice with it. But writers who get stuck, that's a danger. You know, you get good at one thing, and so you keep doing that one thing. It's I can't remember if we were recording when we said this or not, but there is a danger with, like, the typecasting of writers, the same way there is the typecasting of actors, and like it's hard not to get stuck, because like, oh, you're a reliable thriller writer, so we'll keep having you write thrillers. But it's equally possible that you might write a really funny thing or a really romantic thing, but nobody wants you doing that because they've gotten used to the one thing they're willing to pay you for. I'm very jealous and impressed by writers who manage to avoid having too much container, who manage to remain able to go out and try a bit of everything and do a bit of everything.
But with them trying a bit of everything, does that not potentially make them even better at the original thing they're known for?
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, absolutely. But you've got to pay the bills, right? You've got to take the jobs.
Yes.
You've got to take the jobs that pay the money. If you've written 3 good thrillers for television, you're going to be offered more thrillers. And if you turn up one day and say, I've got a great sitcom here, none of the people who made your thrillers are necessarily the right people to produce that. So now you've got to find new collaborators. You've got to find new, and you've got to find someone who believes that you're as good at funny as you are at thrilling. You have to overcome some stuff. It's like casting James Bond, where everybody fantasy casts the role based on what things other actors have done. Like, nobody would have looked at Matt Smith in his episode of Jimmy McGovern's The Street, which was terrific, and he was very good in it. But nobody looks at him that and goes, that guy should be Doctor Who. Wow. It's very hard to get past what we already think a person is. And that's true, like, culturally as well. You know, it's why we bear grudges, and we really shouldn't. We should accept that people sometimes have bad days, but that's really hard because now I've seen them be that thing, and I don't really want to experience that again. It's a hard world to be more than one thing in, because people try. It is our nature to simplify people so that we can cope with the world. I think.
Now, if anyone is listening right now, and this is obviously mostly a comedy podcast, speaking to comedians, what advice would you give to them in terms of being a better writer, but also in terms of standing out and actually, like, in the job interview now or CV now, they got the AI and so many go in the bin. What would be your advice on, like, for comedians to not get their script
CVs thrown in the bin? I mean, comedians is God. I wouldn't dream of giving advice to comedians on how to be comedians, because I've never done it, and I've watched other people do it, and it bewilders me. Be productive seems to be the main thing there. Like, you have to you can't fall in love with a piece of material and say this is the thing, and then, because you'll do that once around each club or whatever, or worse, it gets put on the internet once. One of the most useful things for anybody actually is to get past this idea that one thing will save you, that you've written that one script and that's the one that will carry you forward. The worst thing, that you write a script and you take it in and everybody reads it, even if they love it, they look at it and they go, yeah, we love this. Unfortunately, that's not the kind of thing we're making right now, and nobody's commissioning that kind of thing. If your response to that is, well, I tried, then you shouldn't be doing the job, obviously. You have to come back with, well, don't worry, I've got 2 other things that I'm working on. I'll bring you a draft of that when it's ready. Have multiple things on the boil, keep making material, keep churning stuff out. One of the great things about comedy in the age of social media is how quick people have realized that they can, like, just have another idea, come up with another thing. They become super productive. And I feel like that was something that stand-up comedians were already doing, because although you can hone your brilliant minutes, that audience is going to keep changing because the news keeps changing. There's no joke that lasts completely forever because the context of the world keeps shifting. So being productive is good. Being convincing is another. Stand out. One of the things they say a lot about writing is that you start off by copying all the writers that you like, and that was definitely true of me. I started off writing imitations of other drama writers and other comedy writers. At one point, I was so desperate to copy Jimmy McGovern's voice because I loved it. I was obsessed with Cracker, and I loved his. He did a drama on Channel 4 called Hearts and Minds, which starred Christopher Eccleston, and which just blew me away. Such great rhythm in his writing, such wit. Again, funny, even though it's a drama. The chance to stand out only comes after you've figured out not to just sound like somebody else, but you tend to start by sounding like someone else. Most comedians are fans of other comedians, and there will be inevitably, I think, an overlap in, like, those things I came up with are kind of like what I saw this other comedian do, and she was great, so maybe I could do that. Eventually you got to find your voice, and you find your voice through practice. The more you make, the more clear it becomes what stuff is uniquely you, sounds like you, has your take rather than somebody else's. So finding that voice, really important. And as far as I can tell, the quickest way to do that is to churn a lot of material very quickly, to not get hung up on writing one perfect thing.
Yeah, let it go, let it go, let it go.
Let it keep going. That's the trick.
Now, if anyone's listening in right now, how do they find out about you?
My website is andrewellard.com, although, you know, that's just like my credits and some people saying that I'm nice, which is lovely. Obviously, my stuff's on the IMDb. I guess the thing to do is look up the shows that I've worked on and see if you can figure out if they're well script edited, which is an incredibly impossible thing to do. Because, like, who knows what I changed versus what the writer came up with in the first place? Like, how can you possibly tell that from watching the show? But I think over the course of episodes of, let's say, Chewing Gum and In My Skin, go and watch some Cardinal Burns on the Channel 4 player, because that's just a really good sketch show. That's great. Hopefully eventually it becomes clear that, like, oh, okay, this stuff is quite good. The most recent Red Dwarfs, there's a lot of good stuff in those seasons. But also, if you want to watch what I've written, I co-wrote with Max and Ivan, who are great character comedians, right? Really good stand-ups with strong personas. Max and Ivan created a show called Deep Heat, which was a sitcom about, like, a local touring wrestler group, real underdog story. And I got to sort of live out I co-wrote that with them, and I got to live out all my kind of sports movie fantasies of, like, how can you have the underdog triumph without actually changing the characters and having them be winners by the end of the season. So that was a joy, and that's on the ITV player. That's on what's it called, ITVX. Deep Heat. I loved that show. Max Nivan starred in it as well. And I wrote a kids show called Nova Jones, which was a sci-fi musical sitcom, which is like all of my favorite genres glued together. I was in hog's heaven for that, having to come up with sci-fi comedy plots. So Red Dwarf for kids, or actually it was more like Maid Marian for kids. I loved Maid Marian when I was when Tony Robinson's show when I was younger, and like that was like Blackadder for kids, and this was me kind of, I think, trying to reach for something like that. So doing like strongly plotted sitcom for kids, with big clear characters. But, you know, we get to do our comedy or emotional climaxes with a song, with a musical number. That's great fun. That was so much fun. I've never had a better time. We did 10 episodes a season. We did 3 seasons. We had a lovely collection of writers on there, and it was so nice to step up from being a script editor to other writers to being exec producer on a show where you get to, instead of suggest to the writers, you do get to kind of say, no, we do need to change this. It's like, it's just script editing with a heavier bat. But I loved it, and I'd learned so much from script editing writers that I think 90% of those writers had a very decent time on that show because I knew where they were coming from. I hope so, anyway. I had a blast doing that. I would love, if I could do a version of that for the rest of my life, sci-fi comedy musicals for kids with a team of writers, that would do me. I would retire happy.
So, guys, that's been Andrew. You know where to find him. Join his website. Message him if you want your script getting sent to. He won't be like Gordon Ramsay. He will be productive like who's a cool? He'll be like, who's that Jedi Master in the Phantom Menace? Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon
Jinn.
I've gone from James Bond to Liam Neeson. I'm coming out of this very well.
That's exactly how it is. So he will help you. He'll turn your Pritt stick into a Parker pen. So
I will say I am available to hire. I've never been somebody who says no, only TV shows, only production companies. I am available to hire for writers who want the feedback, but I don't, because there's lots of services that offer that. I don't make a huge big deal out of it, but I am, I've been doing a lot of that for the last kind of 8 weeks, and I've had so much fun with like a new writer every Monday morning giving feedback on a brand new script where it's like, oh, we've got all to discover here. I do enjoy it.
Okay, so guys, you know where to go. You pay him £10,000 per. No, I don't know.
No, it's only 8,000. Yeah.
You discuss it with Andrew. It's been a very interesting chat, taken in many different ways, and it's one of the reasons why I love doing the podcast, getting different views, seeing things in a different way, and then it's been an absolutely brilliant episode, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Next episode is going to be with me doing live shows in Edinburgh. I'm going to be. I think I'm going to focus more on, I think I'll do one more comedy show, like Comedy Club Promoter. Then I'm going to focus more on backgrounds of comedians. I think I'm going to talk more about like mental health, disabilities, challenges that people face, and people from different backgrounds. But that's what's going to happen next, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks a lot, Andrew. That was fun.
Thank you very much indeed. We didn't even get on to half of the written questions you'd sent me because there was so much to talk about. It was great.
Yeah, it always happens like that. I keep getting an image like of each interview going a certain way, but there's not been a single interview I've had that's gone as I expected.
I used to do interviews for the Red Dwarf website, and they all go wherever they go. I interviewed like